for Oxley, and I now call the honourable member for Menzies.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. I rise tonight to highlight once again one of the most important issues for the people of Melbourne, and in particular my constituents in the electorate of Menzies, and that is the increasing problem of traffic congestion. It's a concern for people right across the metropolitan area of Melbourne, and it's a particular concern for the residents of Menzies. Roads such as Bulleen-Templestowe Road, roads such as Manningham Road, the gridlock that occurs each morning for a couple of hours and a couple of hours in the afternoon around the Bulleen-Heidelberg river crossing, the river crossing at Fitzsimons Lane and also at Warrandyte are choke points so far as the City of Melbourne is concerned in its traffic flow, and are major problems so far as congestion is concerned within my electorate. The reality is that for year after year after year, for decades now, the population of Melbourne has been increasing significantly. We see all the predictions that in the not-too-distant future, Melbourne will become the most populous city in Australia, overtaking Sydney. And yet the reality is that the infrastructure, particularly the road and transport infrastructure of the city, has not kept up with the progress in terms of the population growth. A decade ago, Sir Rod Eddington advised the then Brumby Labor government in Victoria that there were certain major projects of importance. One of those projects was the East-West Link. And indeed, Sir Rod, who advised the Brumby government to build the road in 2008, has basically put the Premier, Mr Andrews, on notice that the growing Melbourne population now desperately needs new routes to combat rising congestion. He said recently this: "I think the pressure of traffic will ultimately drive an east-west tunnel in the way I recommended. I think there are real challenges in the east-west corridor." And indeed, he lamented that this project has now become a political football. The reality is that for a period close to a decade, political parties of both persuasions, that both Labor, as recommended to the then Labor Brumby government, and the coalition, supported the concept that we needed this important infrastructure link between the eastern and the western suburbs of Melbourne. And as Sir Rod said more recently, that is something which still needs to be done. In a recent address, he acknowledged that the western portion of that link was the priority, but went on to say and to stress that the eastern part of it was also a priority that needed building, and indeed what also needs building is the north-east link. Both of these infrastructure projects, the east-west link and the north-east link, particularly affect residents of my electorate, because it's the congestion on the roads that lead into the Eastern Freeway, roads like Bulleen-Templestowe Road, but also the roads that lead in the missing portion of the Metropolitan Ring Road, namely between the Eastern Freeway and the Northern Ring Road, which causes choke points through Bulleen and Heidelberg, which causes a choke point in the morning on Fitzsimons Lane, and causes not only a choke point but indeed an endangerment to people should there be bushfires in the area at Warrandyte. These are the missing parts of important transport and road infrastructure for Melbourne, and they are areas which particularly affect the constituents of my area. So the recommendations from Sir Rod Eddington, who said that the north-east link and the east-west link are both priorities, both of which must be completed, are extremely important to my constituents. I will continue to campaign in this place to ensure that both of those links are built, and to plead once again, to urge once again the government of Premier Andrews in Victoria to reconsider the east-west link As the proponent of this in the first place, Sir Rod, said recently, it must be built, it's a priority, and I will continue to campaign for it.
Order.